News every 15 minutes, weather every 10, and sports twice an hour.
Newstalk, KGVO, AM 1290 and now 101.5 FM.
You're listening to Montana Morning with Peter Christian.
2 guilty pleas, one in Missoula, one in Hamilton. Good morning, everyone. It's Montana Morning. Congratulations. You made it. It's Friday, April the 10th. 2015 is going to be a nice day in western Montana, looking for high in the 60s. Right now it's clear and 33 degrees. Our newscast, sponsored by Kootenai Creek Village. They've got the maintenance-free active adult community in Stevensville. Get more information by calling 777-5387. Today's top stories: 21-year-old Kevin Hickman appeared in Missoula District Court yesterday for his part in the beating, torture, and killing of a local transient, Gilbert Jack Berry, in August of last year. Deputy Missoula County Attorney Andrew Paul has more.
He appeared with his attorneys, and he entered a guilty plea to aggravated assault. Aggravated assault is basically assault that caused serious bodily injury.
27-year-old Kevin Leno is actually charged with deliberate homicide in Berry's death. Paul said Hickman was there when the death occurred.
Mr. Hickman is a witness to the death itself. Kevin Leno is charged with actually killing Mr. Berry.
Paul said Hickman accepted a plea deal with prosecutors, but details must be approved by the court. He remains in jail on $150,000 bond. Leno's trial is scheduled for May 6th. The man accused in the stomping death of a 25-year-old Robert Tott in Hamilton last January has changed his plea to guilty. Ravalli County Attorney Bill Fulbright has details in yesterday's court appearance of Richard Sullivan.
This is a case in which the defendant, Mr. Sullivan, and his wife were friends with the decedent. They partied together. At the time of his death, they had gotten into an altercation, and in the end, there was a injury caused to the decedent that we believe was a stomping, caused him to bleed to death internally.
Fulbright says Sullivan accepted a plea agreement rather than face trial charged with deliberate homicide.
Deliberate homicide has up to life. In this particular case, we have agreed to recommend 40 years in Montana State Prison with a number of conditions associated with that and so forth, but that's essentially the summary.
Sullivan's wife, Candace, has already pleaded guilty to obstruction of justice for her attempts to cover up the crime. A coroner's jury has determined that an officer was justified when he shot and killed a suicidal Deer Lodge man who pointed a gun at police as they tried to negotiate with him. The Montana Standard reports the jury yesterday found no criminal intent on the part of the officer involved in the December 19th death of Nicholas Frazier. Powell County Sheriff Scott Howard said officers responding to Frazier's 911 call found him with a gun pointed at his own head. The Montana Department of Transportation awarded more than $143,000 in equipment grants for law enforcement jurisdictions to support Vision Zero. That's the initiative to eliminate deaths and serious injuries on Montana roads. Supervisor Janet Kenny says grants were recently awarded to parts of the Treasure State.
The grants that we have are actually money from the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, and these are in support of our partnership with local law enforcement through our STEP program, which is Selective Traffic Enforcement Program. All of this is our effort to reach Vision Zero.
Kenny says over $10,000 was awarded to the Missoula Police Department, $13,000 to the County Sheriff's Office, but Missoula wasn't the only city to apply.
I will just give you some examples. We had Butte Silver Bow applied and was awarded, Fort Peck Tribes, the Flathead County Sheriff's Office, Bozeman, Kalispell, and so forth. So we have a nice representation across the state.
Kenny says a good chunk of the grants will go toward new cameras to be used by law enforcement in their vehicles for traffic enforcement. A 73-year-old man accused of slashing a fellow resident's throat with a large butcher knife in an assisted living home in Butte has pleaded guilty to deliberate homicide. The Montana Standard reports John Edward Grubbs entered his plea yesterday in the March 19th death of 72-year-old Jerry Diltz. The groundbreaking for the construction of the Missoula-Tololo Trail will take place today. Community and Planning Services planner Christina DeCenzo says the project has been in the works for quite some time.
Organizations and individuals have been working together over 20 years to make this trail happen, and it will fill in an 8-mile gap that exists between Lolo and Missoula, and that will ultimately connect all the way down to Hamilton in a trail that's already in place. So that's connecting 50 miles of trail.
DeCenzo says while a large portion of the funds came from a grant, a good amount also came from the city of Missoula.
The rest of the funding is coming from both Missoula County and the city of Missoula. and those figures are not right in front of me right now, but it's about $600,000.
The estimated time to finish building the trail will be about a year, and then individuals will be able to start hiking and biking. The groundbreaking event is at 4 o'clock this afternoon near Farmers State Bank, and that's out in Lolo. A Montana man has been sentenced to more than 22 years in prison on drug and weapons charges after pleading guilty to trafficking methamphetamine in the Bakken oil patch. 32-year-old Ryan Edward Lee of Fairview was sentenced yesterday before District Judge Susan Waters in Billings. He pleaded guilty in November to possession with attempt to distribute meth and carrying a firearm during drug trafficking. Authorities say Lee attempted a second escape by breaking out a window at his cell at the Yellowstone County Jail and chipping away at a wall outside the window over the course of several months. Eminent domain has been a big issue in Missoula with the recent water trial, but many Missoulians have forgotten another eminent domain case back in the 60s, which destroyed the Highlander Brewery. New Highlander Brewery co-owner Bob Lukes says the beer hasn't been made in town for over 50 years.
Highlander was really the beer in western Montana and a lot of Montana for many years. It started in 1910 by what was called the Garden City Brewing Company back then, up through 1964. And the brewery was really a large facility at the base of Waterworks Hill here in Missoula, right over near Rattlesnake Creek. And when the interstate came through I-90 in 1964, they took out that property by eminent domain.
Luke says the new Highlander Brewery will be up and running soon near Grant Creek. He believes Missoula has more than enough room for another brewery.
There's rooms on the grocery store shelves for a couple more Montana beers, and the craft beer segment is picking up pace all over the country. And so, I think good evidence of that is over in Bend, Oregon, which is not that much bigger than Missoula. I think it's 100,000 people. I think they've got 20-some breweries in Bend, Oregon, and so there's room for more breweries in Missoula.
Luke says the brewery should be open by early July and will be producing at least 2 styles of bottled beer with plans for more in the future. Finally, the University of Montana student newspaper is switching from a 4-day printed publication to a larger weekly issue with daily stories online due to cuts in student fees and advertising revenue. Editor-in-chief Rick Sanchez says the Kaiman had planned to make the change starting in the fall, but decided to do it earlier to avoid a potential debt of $20,000 or more by the end of the semester. Sanchez says the weekly paper to be printed on Wednesdays will be more than double in size and contain longer stories. News Talk time is 6:12.
Newstalk, KGVO.
Missoula's official weather station.
We'll look for a mix of sun and clouds today with our high temperatures warming into the mid-60s. Isolated showers are possible this afternoon. We're tracking a cold front that will bring showers and cooler temperatures to the area for the weekend. I'm meteorologist Brooke Foster for KECI 13.